Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Tara East, writer, scholar, teacher, and author of the mystery novel Every Time He Dies. So I was recently checking the analytics of this YouTube channel, and I noticed that a video I posted about a year ago called Heinlein's 5 Rules of Writing is my highest ranking video to date. So I've decided to take the hint and create a series of videos that document the writing rules of 4 famous authors over the next 5 weeks. Those authors are Octavia Butler, Natalie Goldberg, Kurt Vonnegut, and Stephen King, whose video I have broken up into 2 parts. Before we dive into this week's video though, I want to acknowledge that for many of us, writing may not actually be the top priority right now. We're all dealing with a slew of other concerns as we adjust to life working from home, the changes in our financial situation, and the general restrictions that we've been adhering to as part of this lockdown. Now, in many places, these restrictions are starting to lift, and while it may be some time until things return back to normal, I really wanted to create this series as a way to inspire and support you during this strange time. So as I just mentioned, in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down Octavia Butler's 9 rules for writing. Now, if you're not super familiar with Octavia and her work, here's the highlights. Octavia Butler was an African-American science fiction writer whose 1979 novel Kindred cemented her position in the literary canon. She was one of the first female authors and one of the first African-American authors to break into the predominantly white, male-dominated world of science fiction. She is mostly well known for her Parable series, Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talent. Unfortunately, she passed away before she was able to finish the final novel in the trilogy, Parable of the Trickster. Prior to becoming a full-time author, Butler, like many writers, had to work a string of menial jobs in order to survive. During this time, she would get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to write for 3 or 4 hours before she had to go in for her day shift. Once she became a full-time author, she would divide her days between writing and reading. So pretty much our dreams. Now, luckily for us, Butler was an avid journal keeper, and she documented her life and feelings, yes, but also her writing process. Her journals and her research notebooks were donated to the Huntington Library 2 years ago, following Butler's death in 2006. Now, one of my favorite entries from Butlers Journal came before she was a full-time writer, and it reads, "I shall be a best-selling writer. I will find a way to do this. So be it, see to it." As an African-American woman in the 1970s with an ambition to become a full-time author, Butler had to overcome so many obstacles in order to achieve that dream. It took great determination, discipline, and yes, of course, good storytelling. Butler's 9 Rules of Writing were published in an essay titled, "However You Pronounce This." As Butler describes in her own words, writing for publication may be both the easiest and the hardest thing you will ever do. Learning the rules, if they can be called rules, is the easy part. So in this video, I'm going to be listing Butler's 9 rules of writing, followed by my own interpretation of each rule. Rule number 1, read. As you can imagine, Butler was an avid reader. She pushed herself to read from a wide variety of materials, including fiction and nonfiction. She read bad books and good books, and books she wished to emulate. She even educated herself on the art, craft, and business of writing by reading texts within this field. If you want to be a writer, then you must first be a reader. Now, you don't have to like reading, but you need to do it anyway. Now, if you're time poor, like many of us, or if you have a short attention span, like many of us are developing, then audiobooks are your friend. You can listen to them while you're commuting, exercising, or while you're completing some mindless task like cooking or cleaning. Rule number 2, take classes and go to writers' workshops. Now, the problem with aspiring writers is that because they learned how to read and write in primary school, they think they've already learned all there is to know. But writing is called a craft for a reason. In the same way that you know how to write, you also know how to kick a football and how to upload a video to YouTube. But that doesn't mean that you're a sports superstar or a tech genius. Signing up for a writing class and workshops is the best way to develop your skill as a writer, as you'll receive feedback on both the quality of your writing on a sentence level, as well as what is working in your story and what is not. It is vital to your development as a writer that you get feedback from people other than friends and family. You can still question the feedback that you receive from strangers, but the critiques delivered in a writing workshop are often more trustworthy than that of other sources, because the members in your workshop are not obliged to say nice things to you because they're not tainted by their love for you. Rule number 3, write. Shocking, I know. So Butler recommends that you write every day for a really long time. Now, I used to agree with this prescriptive advice, but the truth is there is no one way to write. Some people work best when their hands are touching their story every single day, and other people work better on binge sessions. Now, binge writers, and I've covered this topic previously, are the kind of writers who will go long periods of time without writing, say a week or a month, maybe even longer, but when they feel compelled to write, they will go hard at it, doing 8-hour days or pulling all-nighters because they feel so compelled to tell the story in that moment. These days, my belief is that if you want to be a writer, yes, you must write, but it's up to you to figure out what that process looks like and what routine will work for you. If you're already an established writer or you have an established writing process, then chances are you already know what works best for you. And at a guess, I'd say your 2 biggest hurdles will still be 1, your own personal resistance, and 2, your need to protect that writing time from other outside sources. Now, I've previously covered many strategies on how to overcome both of these hurdles, so I'll be sure to include the links below in the description box. If you're new to writing or new-ish to writing, then I suggest you experiment with a wide variety of routines and methods. You need to mess around with different times of the day and different genres, and you need to write in different styles and try different locations. Experiment with writing an outline and then writing without an outline. Write while you listen to music and then in total silence. Figure out what you need in order to get words on the page and then make sure you get it. Personally, and Butler agrees with me here, I recommend that everybody keep a journal. Writing in a journal is such a great way to reflect on your own creative practice, to interrogate your work, and to become an observer of your own life, your thoughts and your feelings. And it's a way for you to respond to what you see happening out there in the world. It's a place for you to figure out what you really think, which is an invaluable thing to know if you want to write about politics, social justice issues, human relations, desire, depression, whatever. Rule number 4. Revise your writing until it's as good as you can make it. Okay guys, I can't even believe I need to still say this, but your first draft is not your final draft. You must revise your writing. Now fortunately, all that reading, those writing classes, and those workshops you have been attending will no doubt help you to revise your work. You need to check for plot holes and consistency with your characters and point of view. You need to proofread your work for typos. You need to revise your work until it is as good as you can make it. Now, I'd like to acknowledge that Butler doesn't talk about beta readers in her rules, but I highly recommend that you reach out to other readers and writers whose opinions you trust and ask them to critique your work. Once you've read through their feedback and applied whatever changes you agree with, give your manuscript a final once-over, and if you are traditionally publishing, make sure your manuscript follows the publisher's formatting guidelines. This is very important. Rule number 5. Submit your work for publication. Duh. If you want to traditionally publish your work, then Butler urges you to research the various markets that are interesting to you. Become familiar with the books or magazines of publishers that you want to sell your work to. Once you've decided on a publisher, the only thing left to do is submit. Yes, submitting your work can be very scary, but it's important that you be brave and that you hit the send button anyway. If your story is rejected, that's okay. Find another publisher and send it out again. Continue this process until you finally get a yes. Because here's the thing, rejection is part of life as a writer. So it's important that you A, get used to it, and B, develop ways to cope with it. Now, Butler doesn't address the issue of self-publishing specifically, because when she published her Rules of Writing in 1995, self-publishing was like crazy expensive. It wasn't very common, and frankly, it was really looked down on. Fortunately, things have changed, and indie publishing is a totally viable, legitimate, and potentially lucrative option for many authors. Much like traditional publishing, if you want to go the indie route, then again, you need to do your research. Rule number 6. I'm not very good at this, am I? Forget inspiration. Inspiration is fickle. Habit is dependable. Developing a discipline about writing by committing to a certain number of hours, sessions, or words a week is what will carry you to the finish line long after inspiration has fallen out of the race. You may not have made writing a habit yet, but there are so many tricks you can use to create habits that stick. Now, one of my favorite writers on this topic is Gretchen Rubin, and I'll be sure to put a link to her website and books below. Rule number 7. All right, I got it. Forget talent. Talent is no good to you if you don't first have the habit of writing. If you are a naturally talented writer, good for you. But if you're not, then don't sweat it. Writing can be taught. Insert obvious disclaimer here. Good writing comes from learning the craft, practicing with intent, interrogating your work, and editing that work until it sings. As Butler says, never let pride or laziness prevent you from learning, improving your work, and changing its direction when necessary. Rule number 8. Don't worry about imagination. As you well know, one of the most common questions any author gets is, where do you get your ideas? And of course, the answer is everywhere. Books, writing, learning, and living a reflective life will all keep the flames of your creativity stoked. You have all the imagination you need to create stories that will make people feel something, that will make them see the world in a different way, to be entertained and educated. Here's the thing we gotta remember, and it's something I have to remind myself all the time. Writing is fun. Playing with your story, the words that you use, and the storylines you create is just like adult playtime. So remember that you choose the mindset when you're approaching your writing. You get to choose if your writing session is hard and grueling. And look, sometimes it is hard, but most of the time we should be striving to meet the blank page with that playful mindset, to see writing as fun and not as a chore. Now, something else you should remember while you're writing is that really nothing is too silly, especially if you're doing a first draft. Because if you do write something that is a little bit silly or a little bit of a stretch, just know that you can edit it later, because remember, you must revise your work. Now we're up to the final rule, rule number 9, persist. Now I gotta say, this is probably the most important rule, as this character trait underlines every aspect of being a writer. You must persist. You must continue to develop your craft. Ask hard questions of your work. Read when you don't really feel like reading, and write when you don't really feel like writing. Ignore rejection letters and continue submitting your work anyway. The only difference between an aspiring writer and a published one is persistence. So there you have it, guys. That is Octavia Butler's 9 rules of writing, plus a little bit of commentary from me. Now, if you liked this video, of course, hit the subscribe button to support my channel. Thank you. And if you want even more writing advice, you can head to taraeast.com. I have over 150 blogs on the website, so there's sure to be something there that will help you at whatever stage of writing you are at. And of course, you can check out the other videos on this channel. While you're on the website, be sure to join my weekly email newsletter. When you do, I'll send you a little cheat sheet called 7 Ways to Stay Motivated as a Writer. The perfect complement to this video and the rest of the videos in this series. And if you're looking for a new read during this lockdown, please feel free to pick up a copy of my mystery novel, Every Time He Dies. It's gotten some pretty fancy reviews. Thank you so much for watching this week, guys. I would love any feedback you have to share. Just leave a comment below. Stay safe, stay calm, and keep writing.